Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here. We have another special guest up here in Brooklyn this week, Ryan Carrazza from Inside the Hall. He is pinch hitting for Greg Rosenstein, who was doing that yesterday just to make sure I don't have to talk into a camera by myself because I'm pretty bad at that. Anyway, Indiana wins this one, 82-72. And what Tom Crean went so far as to say is to call it an epic battle, and I think that was pretty fair. They come away with an overtime victory. Really tightly played, tightly contested game throughout regulation. They had about an 8-point lead late. I think it might have even gone up to 10. I think late in regulation they lost that. Yogi Ferrell missed a couple critical free throws, allowed Georgetown to tie it up on a layup by Otto Porter with about 4.6 seconds to go to send this one to overtime. But Indiana pulls it out and prevails. Just to start, Ryan, just what kind of impressed you about this team and really this game tonight, I guess?
Well, yeah, it was kind of a polar opposite of Monday's win over Georgia in the sense that, that first game against Georgia, offensively they missed a lot of shots early, missed a lot of shots early in the second half as well. And tonight, both teams were hitting from the get-go. They were both shooting tremendously from the three-point line. Both teams were in a zone, and so they were kind of just shooting over the top of it and getting the ball in the middle and getting some shots from the outside. So, I thought the atmosphere in here was great. It seemed like there were more. I mean, there were.
It was
a
good 75% Indiana, I thought. Maybe at least, maybe more.
Yeah, about that, and I feel like there were more people in the stands tonight as opposed to the first game as well. So, and it was really loud in here at times, and it was pretty impressive the turnout that Indiana fans had, and so it really had a interesting atmosphere in here for just being a November game.
It kind of, I think, what it probably pitches through, like what it sort of compares to, I think, is it was a little bit like a tournament game in which you have that's sort of close to one team's site. I mean, I guess you could say if Indiana plays in, say, Lexington in the tournament or ends up at at the regional site in Indianapolis, it's probably similar to what it would look like. I was really amazed at how good of a turnout Indiana had in New York City, despite the fact, Georgetown, it's not far, obviously not far down the road. Surely has a lot of graduates in the area. Indiana well outdrew Georgetown. And Georgetown, I thought, had a pretty decent contingent, made some noise when they were making runs. But Indiana really probably had 3/4 of the joint, maybe 2/3 at least, more or less. And this is a pretty big arena. It was about 10,000 fans in here. And Indiana fans really showed up. And the atmosphere was really impressive, like you said, from the get-go. It was just shot for shot, almost. And just really good-looking offense in the first half. And both teams both teams went more exclusively to zone, especially in the second half. They played a little bit of man-to-man in the first half. But really, I guess both started to play good zone, I guess was a better way to put it. Both teams had a harder time getting anything accomplished. They were just kind of getting out and extending it and making sure that they had guys in everybody's face. It seemed like early on maybe they weren't. Each team was kind of getting used to playing zone. I think Indiana really hadn't put a whole heck of a lot of it in up until this point. And really in the second half, I thought you started to see them really, both teams really make sure they were contesting shots, getting in the face of shooters, and keeping them from really running any kind of offense. But I think one thing that obviously stands out about this game for Indiana is, I think, more than maybe any other game to date, it sort of validated the use of 2 point guards. Despite the fact that Georgetown was going 6'1" and then 6'8" across the line, more or less, was playing a 6'8" guard, I guess you could say, or really, more or less, they played four power forwards tonight. And Indiana still said, no, we're going to go with what our lineup usually is. We're going to play Yogi Ferrell and Jordan Hulls at the same time. And I think it was really kind of critical for them, and the fact that both of those guys really played well tonight really was kind of the reason they won this thing. Yeah,
and there was certainly from some legions of fans and even media, I feel like that said, well, is Jordan Hulls, is he just going to be maybe the super six man this year, and they're going to start Sheehy because of it. Kind of been said that
bigger lineup and more and a better defensive lineup.
Yeah, better defensive lineup, and Sheehy had, Crean kept saying him and Zeller were the two most improved players on the team, but I think as far as these two games here were concerned, there's a reason Jordan Hulls won the MVP here. At
he absolutely deserved it in every way possible.
He was sensational here. He had that great run against Georgia. I think he either assisted or scored on like 18 of the 20 points when they kind of went on that run in the second half last night, and he had some big shots tonight. It kind of seemed like whenever they kind of needed a basket, Jordan Hulls somehow found the ball and he scored. And he's been able to, beyond just shooting threes, he's doing a little bit of his kind of razzle dazzle there. Actually, it was funny. on his post game comments, someone asked him sort of some NBA players that he watches.
I got a laugh out of that one too.
Yeah, I think he said like Manu Ginobili was one player who sort of, you know.
He said Manu. He said Chris Paul. He said a couple other guys. I'm sure Steve Nash was in there, and I know. Way back, I know Hulls was a big, Pete Maravich guy. He used to watch all that stuff, but then he said something about LeBron. He was like, well, I don't watch LeBron because it's not like I can do that. None of that stuff is something I can pull off. But I think it's easy just to pigeonhole Hulls as just a shooter. I think there are still some people, maybe nationally, that think that, and some other people that are just non-Hulls believers that kind of look at it that way. But he's made so many big shots in so many different ways, and also, I mean, he's proven just more and more the last couple of years how much he can get his own. And there were a couple of huge plays in which he proved that tonight. There was one play with the clock running down. I think it was in the second half when they were building the lead. Rosenstein checks in now. He's here.
What up?
Get a chair. Go ahead. Anyway,
it's like 2:30 in the morning. Let's get going.
Doesn't matter. Circle back in here. But anyway. One play with the shot clock running, he managed to just drive into the lane and just hit this really nice teardrop floater. Again, a situation where somebody had to make a shot, somebody had to make a play, and Hulls can be that guy more and more now. It's not just a situation where you got to get him an open look, or you got to create for him an open look. He can create his own. And then the 3-point play, I thought in overtime was critical, and I was also it was telling. It was fitting for what he'd done really this whole weekend, as he just managed to just get to the line. Get to the hole, basically draw a foul, and just get a runner to fall. And you could tell just when he fell down, he was just kind of pumping his fist there. It's like, that's Hulls' your shot at this point. He can do all that, and he defended well. I mean, he had 4 steals. He does really well in zones. He does really well off the ball. He's not great at keeping a really quick guard in front of him, but he's incredibly intelligent basketball-wise. And his ability to just play passing lanes, harass people, just be annoying enough, to create some turnovers, I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, his maturity is certainly shined through here on both ends of the floor, and kind of you talked a little bit about them being able to play together, and we kind of saw at times where when Yogi had that, missed those 3 throws at the end of regulation there, where Hulls said that in that next huddle that he talked to him and kind of called him down. So. Yeah, it seems like it's a good relationship between the two of them so far. After there were sort of these questions of, can it be done?
Yeah, and I guess the question for me was never whether they were going to have issues with chemistry, because they're both such smart basketball guys. They just know the game so incredibly well. I think you knew that there was going to be a synergy, and definitely when it came to sort of Yogi driving and kicking and finding Hulls, and even the opposite, even Jordy sort of driving and finding a way to get Farrell the ball in good positions. You knew that was going to work. But I think the big thing tonight was was one, the fact that they could defend together, the fact that they were not going to get crushed by a bigger team, just get overrun by a bigger team. But also in ways I don't want to go so far as to say they're dependent on one another, but they kind of are in a way. I mean, Yogi really was helped, like you said, by just having Jordan Hulls out there, by just having somebody he could rely on in cases where he was starting to struggle. He could look to the more mature guy that had been there before, that knew how to make big shots, handle those situations, and Hulls did that. And I think Farrell took a lot from that, especially after he missed the 2 free throws again. I thought he really looked to Jordy, and I think he took a lot of sort of strength and kind of toughness from him. Not that Yogi doesn't have it already, but I think it made a difference.
How much concern, though, do you have defensively? Because early in that game, I don't know if you guys brought this up yet, early in that game, I mean, Georgetown was able to get off any shot they wanted, basically. So, I mean, having 2 guys who are 6 foot or smaller, do you think that's a concern down the road, looking at kind of what they did tonight?
I think it makes a difference. We kind of did address that to a degree, but I think, obviously it's going to be tough for them to play man-to-man. That's going to be one issue, is when they play bigger guards, bigger lineups, it's going to be hard for them to play man. But if they can play zone, and I thought they were effective in zone tonight. I mean, and I thought in a lot of different ways they were to cause some turnovers again. Hulls had 4 steals. I think I think Yogi is really good on the ball. I think Hulls is really good off the ball. You have 2, talented guys there.
Well, there was one situation, I think it was at the very end of regulation, when
they were taking Hulls out.
Victor and I think, was it Yogi switched, and whoever it was for Georgetown was able to take him right to the hole, because again it was
it might have been Porter on that one.
Okay, I think that it was Porter, perhaps, and he just went right at him because of the size disadvantage, and they scored, and so that's gonna, I mean, you can't hide from that at sometimes.
Yeah,
but.
No, I mean it is going to be an issue in some cases, but I think one thing not everyone's going to play this big. I mean, there are guys that are going to have this many big guys, but who plays 4 power forwards?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I think
it's the starting lineup was 6'1", then
it was 6'1", 6'8", 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was 3 6'8s and a 6'9" and a 6'1".
Yeah, it's an intriguing mix of guys that they're using, but you can see how it's effective.
And those
it works for Georgetown. It works for
Crazy.
Georgetown. I mean, and I don't think it's nuts at all considering what they have. I think they put the 5 most talented guys they have on the floor, and it works for them. Yeah. And also, I think the offense they play, it works for them. I mean, you didn't see as much of the sort of Princeton back-cutting stuff that you usually see from them because there was so much zone. But that's what they do, and I think it can work that way. Georgetown's offense can work that way. It doesn't work for everybody. And point being, they're not going to have to play that much. This in a way, the fact that they were able to beat this, this is as good a test in that way as they're going to see. They're not going to see that much size on the perimeter. Maybe the rest of the year, they'll still see guys that are bigger, and they'll still see guys that are 6'4", 6'5", and more sort of traditional 2s and 3s. But I mean, they found a way tonight, and I think if they can find a way tonight, they can find a way any other night. More or less. Rosie, anything else you want to add on that one, or in general?
Sure
what
everything?
Not necessarily. What was like? You watched Georgetown. You're in their area. You know those guys.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned yesterday, I think length was going to be a problem, and it kind of was, at least early in this game. I think the big thing was they started attacking them harder than usual, getting to the free throw line, and that was a big deal because you look at the overtime. Well, first of all, the free throw discrepancy was so much different between Indiana and Georgetown. I mean, that was a clear thing, just being able to get to the line and they were hitting. I think, aggressiveness might have been a big factor in that too.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, early on though, Georgetown so far this season has done a really good job of not sending teams to the line, and Indiana's been good at getting to the line a lot. So I was kind of interested to see what would happen in this game. And the first half, Indiana only took 6 attempts from the line, but then as sort of the game went on, and especially in that overtime, I couldn't believe that they had 17 attempts in overtime from the line.
Yeah.
Like, that seems ridiculous.
That's almost what Georgetown had for full game.
Yeah,
like
I didn't realize that as it was happening until I kind of saw the box after.
Yeah, no, I hadn't even realized that either. No, it seemed like they were going to the line and they were getting fouled in the backcourt. Basically, they were just kind of finding ways to force them to foul. And it just got Georgetown to reach. I mean, in a lot of cases, Georgetown probably had some dumb fouls. Really, was fouling guys ways away from the bucket in situations where they didn't have to foul yet. But yeah, we were able to draw those. We were able to get them reaching, and it did seem like for as much as the Georgetown size made a difference, I think the Indiana speed made a difference. The Indiana, the fact that they were coming at them with Holes and Farrell, and it was sometimes tough for those guys to keep Holes and Farrell in front of them. Really, just to have to chase those guards around a lot. I think kind of wore them down to a certain degree. Yeah. I thought Cody Zeller obviously showed up tonight after a really kind of tough first outing. He still doesn't look 100% to me. No. He still looks a little bit sick, but he was able to power his way to a few. He had 17 points, and finally looked like he started to get the free throw thing figured out because he was having a problem with that. Yeah. And also just I don't think he defended great, but for the number of big guys he had to defend, for the amount of times that he had to sort of play help defense inside and block some guys, I think he still put together a pretty solid effort there. Christian Watford pulls off a double-double.
It's 2:30.
It is 2:30. I had to cut it out. Good point, Rosie. Thanks everybody, and appreciate Inside the Hall for making sure I didn't have to just babble by myself today. Thanks, guys.